Back to the book. Suddenly, there was some commotion at the British barricade. Hand grenades flew, rifles banged, machine guns clattered. "They're coming! They're coming!" We leaped behind sandbags and started shooting. In the heat of the battle, one of my men, Corporal Kimpenhaus, jumped onto the parapet and fired down into the trench until he was brought down by 2 bad wounds in his arms. I took note of this hero of the hour and was proud to congratulate him 2 weeks later on award of the Iron Cross First Class. No sooner had we got back from this interruption to our lunch than there was more pandemonium. It was one of those curious incidents that can suddenly and unpredictably transform an entire situation. The noise was coming from a subaltern in the regiment on our left who wanted to line up with us and seemed inflamed by a berserk fury. Drink seemed to have tipped his innate bravery into towering rage. "Where are the Tommies? Let me at 'em. Come on, boys. Who's coming with me?" In his infinite fury, he knocked over our fine barricade and plunged forward, clearing a path for himself with hand grenades. So this guy is, going after it. He's described as being like almost drunk. Maybe he actually is drunk, but he's just standing up and charging forward, clearing a path for himself with hand grenades. Back to the book. His orderly slipped ahead of him along the trench, shooting down anyone who survived the explosions. Bravery, fearless risking of one's own life is always inspiring. We too found ourselves picked up by his wild fury and scrabbling around to grab a few hand grenades, rushed to form part of this berserker's progress. Soon I was up alongside him, tearing along the line, and the other officers too, followed by riflemen from my company. Even Captain von Brixen, the battalion commander, was up there in the van, rifle in hand, bringing down enemy hand grenade throwers. The British resisted manfully. Every traverse had to be fought for. The black balls of Mills bombs, those are British grenades, crossed in the air with our own long-handled grenades. Behind every traverse we captured, we found corpses or bodies still twitching. We killed each other, sight unseen. We too suffered losses. A piece of iron crashed into the ground next to the orderly, which the fellow was unable to avoid, and he collapsed to the ground while his blood issued onto the clay from his many wounds. We hurtled over his body and charged forwards. Thunderous crashes pointed us the way. Hundreds of pairs of eyes were lying in wait behind rifles and machine guns in Dead Man's Land. We were already a long way from our own front lines. From all sides, bullets whistled round our steel helmets or struck the trench parapet with a hard crack. Each time a black iron oval broke the horizon, one's eyes sized it up with that instantaneous clarity of which a man is only capable in moments of life and death. During those instances of waiting, you had to try and get to a place where you could see as much of the sky as possible, because it was only against its pale backdrop that it was possible to see the black, jagged iron of those deadly balls with sufficient clarity. Then you hurled your own bomb and leaped forward. One barely glanced at the crumpled body of one's opponents. He was finished, and a new duel was commencing. In the exchange of hand grenades, it reminded me of fencing with foils. You needed to jump and stretch, almost as in a ballet. It is the deadliest of duels, as it invariably ends with one of the participants or the other being blown to smithereens. Or both. Hand grenade fights. And just to kind of explain that a little bit, it's one thing that that we definitely learned in the SEAL teams when you're patrolling at night, and this is especially before night vision, when you wanted to see the person in front of you, and especially like to see their hand signals, because we use all hand signals at night. Mm-hmm. So if you want to see them, you kind of get down on a knee and you put the backlight behind him so you can see what hand signal they're passing. And what he's doing here is they're trying to get as low as they can and backlight the sky as much as they can so they can see the grenades that are being thrown at them. And then when they do get thrown at them, they try and get up to a spot where they don't think it's going to blow up. And then they huck their own grenades back. In these moments, I was capable of seeing the dead. I jumped over them with every stride without horror. They lay there in the relaxed and softly spilled attitude that characterizes those moments in which life takes its leave. Now they get the British kind of trapped. The trench they were trying to escape down doubled back on itself towards ours like a curved frame of a leer. And at the narrowest point, they were only 10 paces apart, so they had to pass us again. From our elevated position, we were able to look down on the British helmets as they stumbled in their haste and excitement. I tossed a hand grenade in front of the first lot, bringing them up short. And after them, all the others. Then they were stuck in a frightful jam. Hand grenades flew through the air like snowballs, covering everything in milk-white smoke. Fresh bombs were handed up to us from below. Lightnings flashed between the huddled British, hurling up rags of flesh and uniforms and helmets. There were mingled cries of rage and fear. With fire in our eyes, we jumped onto the very lip of the trench. The rifles of the whole area were pointed at us. Suddenly, in my delirium, I was knocked to the ground as by a hammer blow. Sober, I pulled off my helmet and saw to my terror that there were 2 large holes in it. Cadet Mormon, leaping up to assist me, assured me that I had a bleeding scratch at the back of my head, nothing more. A bullet shot from some distance had punched through my helmet and had only brushed my skull. Half unconscious, I reeled back with a hurriedly applied bandage to remove myself from the eye of the storm. No sooner had I passed the nearest traverse than a man ran up behind me and told me that Teb had just been killed in the same place by a shot in the head. The news floored me. A friend of mine with noble qualities, with whom I had shared joy, sorrow, and danger for years now, who only a few moments ago had called out some pleasantry to me, taken from life by a tiny piece of lead. I could not grasp the fact. Unfortunately, it was all too true. In this murderous sector of trench, all my NCOs and a third of my company were bleeding to death. Shots in the head rained down. Lieutenant Hopf and another one of the fallen. An older man, a teacher by profession, a German schoolmaster in the best sense of the word. My 2 ensigns and many others besides were wounded. And yet the 7th Company held on to the conquered line under the command of Lieutenant Hoppenrath, the only able-bodied officer remaining, until we were relieved. Of all the stimulating moments in a war, there is none to compare with the encounter of 2 stormtroop commanders in the narrow clay walls of a line. There is no going back and no pity. And everyone knows who has seen of them in their kingdom. The aristocrat of the trench with hard, determined visage, brave to the point of folly, leaping agilely forward and back with keen, bloodthirsty eyes, men who answered the demands of the hour, and whose names go down in no chronicle. And I think as we read these books, right? These books, these are chronicles. Mm-hmm. Somebody wrote, this guy lived and wrote, but he's making a specific point here. And he uses the term the aristocrat of the trench. And it's not the term, the term aristocrat, that it's not the snobby aristocrat. Right. That's not what he's talking about. You look up the definition of aristocrat, and one of the meanings of it is like the best of. Mm. So that's what he's talking about. These guys that were the best guys in the trench, that had the hard look, that would get after it. Mm. And yet their names go down in no chronicle. And I'll tell you, I know many, many brave men in the SEAL teams, in the Marine Corps, in the Army, brave souls that were aristocrats of war. And their name will go down in no chronicle.